She looked me straight in the eye when she said it, calm, deliberate, rehearsed. I just need some space. No contact. I need time to figure myself out. Her tone wasn't emotional. It wasn't pleading or uncertain. It was structured, measured, like every word had already been weighed before leaving her lips. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a conversation. It was an announcement. Something she'd already decided, and I was simply being informed. We'd been together for 3 years. College sweethearts, surviving on cheap takeout and late-night laughter. I'd seen her at her worst, messy hair, oversized shirts, tears over exams, and stress. We'd built a life from scraps of hope and caffeine. I thought that kind of history meant something. I thought it meant permanence. But permanence is an illusion you tell yourself when things feel steady. Underneath, everything is always shifting. Lately, she'd been drifting. Subtle at first. Fewer texts during the day. Shorter calls at night. Her hugs became lighter quick, almost polite. There was a time she'd fall asleep on my chest, tracing circles on my skin while talking about nothing. Now she'd turn her back, muttering goodnight like a habit. I noticed it, of course, but I didn't confront it. Because when something feels like it's slipping away, you pretend not to see it. You hope pretending can slow it down. When she finally said she needed space, I just sat there, hands still, heart quiet. I didn't ask why. I didn't ask if she'd come back. Because deep down, I already knew the answer. We agreed on 30 days. No calls, no texts, no checking social media. A full blackout. She called it time to breathe. I called it what it really was, distance in disguise. That first week, I functioned like a machine. Work from 9 to 6. Gym till 8. Dinner for 1. Then silence. Always silence. I told myself it was good, that the quiet was cleansing. But by the 5th night, I realized silence isn't peaceful when it's forced. It's suffocating. I'd scroll through my phone just to feel movement. My thumb would hover over her name, but I never pressed it. I kept her muted, not blocked, because blocking was final. Muting was hope disguised as restraint. Every night. I'd go to bed thinking about that last look she gave me, composed, steady, almost relieved. Like letting go of me was something she'd been planning for a while. By the start of the 2nd week, the silence had changed shape. It wasn't just around me anymore. It was inside me. I'd catch myself imagining what she was doing with all that space she wanted. Was she reading again? Seeing friends? Or had that space already been filled by someone else? It's strange how easily the human mind starts rewriting memories when it's desperate for meaning. I started replaying our last few months, every moment that didn't make sense. The way she smiled at her phone sometimes. How she flinched when I touched her shoulder one evening. The way she said, "I'm tired," when I asked if she still loved me. And still, I refused to hate her. Because hate would mean she still had a hold on me. No, what I felt was something colder. Understanding that night. I stood by the window, watching the city lights fade into the fog, and whispered to no one, "It's just a break. She'll come back." Then I laughed quietly, not because it was funny, but because I finally heard how pathetic it sounded. Still, I said it again, because lies, when repeated softly enough, start to feel like comfort, and comfort was all I had left. Friday night, just another quiet evening, the kind that drags on when your life has settled into silence. I was finishing up an email I didn't care about when my phone buzzed. A notification popped up. You've been tagged in a photo by Sharon Miller, Lauren's mum. I didn't think much of it at first. Sharon was sweet, the kind of woman who baked pies on weekends, remembered every holiday, and left long comments under our pictures about how we were meant to be. I figured she'd posted some old memory. Something harmless. Something innocent. But it wasn't old. The album title read, Weekend Getaway with My Baby Girl. The first photo stopped me cold. Lauren stood barefoot on a beach I didn't recognize. Her hair messy from the wind, that same white sundress I bought her 2 summers ago flowing around her knees. She was smiling, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in months. And right next to her was a guy I'd never seen before. He had one arm wrapped around her waist, confident and comfortable, like he belonged there. Sharon's caption said, "So happy my girl found someone who makes her smile again." I didn't react, didn't flinch. I just stared. Sometimes shock doesn't explode. It freezes. Every detail stood out. Her hand resting on his chest, the way her body leaned toward him, the warmth in her face. None of it looked like friendship. It looked like replacement. I took a screenshot, then another, then the entire album. Minutes passed before I realized I hadn't blinked. The room around me felt smaller, heavier. My pulse stayed steady. No anger, no heartbreak, just clarity, cold and exact. Then the album disappeared. Deleted, I refreshed the page. Nothing gone, but not from my phone. Not from my head. I sat back in my chair and studied the pictures again. Her smile, his arm, the way she looked at him, not like someone new, but like someone familiar. Like she'd been practicing that look for weeks before the silence began. I poured a drink, still watching. The whiskey barely burned. It just settled, slow and certain, the way truth does when you stop running from it. That's when I understood she didn't need space to find herself. She needed space to replace me, to make her next move look clean. The no contact wasn't about healing. It was about hiding. I put my glass down, the sound barely a whisper. Everything felt still, clear, to clear dot. Then my phone buzzed again. A message from Lauren. "Hey, please don't freak out about what you saw. I was going to tell you." Freak out. That was her choice of words. Like this was some minor misunderstanding. I didn't respond. I just watched the typing dots appear and disappear. 5 minutes later, another message came through. "It's not what it looks like. He's just a friend. My mum didn't know about our break." I stared at the screen, took another sip, and felt something click into place. Step 1, deny. Step 2, deflect. Step 3, delete. It was all predictable, calculated. Her control over the story, flawless as always. I typed one line. "Friends don't hold each other like that." The typing dots appeared again, then vanished for good. And just like that, the conversation was over. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't cry. Didn't even get angry. I just sat there, letting the truth settle, not like a wound, but like a formula that finally made sense. She hadn't gone to find herself. She'd gone to find someone else and make sure she could still look like the good one when it was done. And honestly, that kind of logic made perfect sense. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was hurt or angry, but because my mind was too clear. Everything suddenly became sharp, painfully clear, almost cold. I sat in the chair, holding my phone, watching my own reflection on the dark screen. There was no expression left, only silence. Close to midnight, the phone lit up again. A new message. Hey. Don't be mad. I was going to tell you. I read it slowly, word by word, like I was reading something I'd seen before. That tone, those carefully chosen words, too proper, too cautious. She wasn't writing to explain. She was writing to control. I didn't reply. I put the phone down on the table, poured myself a little more whiskey, and sat still, listening to the ticking of the clock. A few minutes later, another notification appeared. It's not what you think. He's just a friend. My mum doesn't know about us. I smiled, short, cold, just a friend. A phrase people use when every other lie has run out. I opened the photo again. His hand on her waist. Her head tilted slightly. Her eyes turned toward him. Intimate, close, natural. Not a trace of hesitation anywhere. I typed slowly, one word at a time. Friends don't hold each other like that. The message was sent. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No reply. I stared at the phone lying silently on the table, the notification light fading. I knew what she was doing. She was trying to erase traces, clean everything up before the story spread. She wanted to control even the way I reacted, and I wasn't going to give her that. I didn't call back. Didn't send another message. I let everything drift, quiet and orderly. For the first time, the silence belonged to me. Not something she demanded, but something I chose. That night, I sat watching the streetlight filter through the curtains, the glass of whiskey still half full. I thought about her words. I need time to find myself. And I realized maybe she had found what she was looking for. It just wasn't me anymore. Betrayal doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it happens quietly, long enough, smooth enough that you don't even notice when you've already been replaced. I leaned back, closed my eyes. No bitterness, no anger. Just one clear feeling. This would be the last time she'd ever occupy my mind. I turned off my phone. Didn't delete the messages. Didn't delete the photos. I kept everything as proof of a lesson. And in the dark, I whispered softly, almost without sound, "Thank you for showing me who you really are." The next morning, sunlight slipped through the blinds, leaving thin streaks of gold across the wall. The room looked exactly the same as it had the night before. The half-empty glass of whiskey, the phone face down on the table, silence sitting heavy in the air. I got up, made myself a cup of coffee, slow and steady. No rush, no thoughts. Everything felt strangely orderly, like the calm that follows after a storm finally burns itself out. By afternoon, my phone rang. The name on the screen, Sharon Miller. I stared at it for a few seconds before answering. Her voice was soft, trembling, careful. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. Lauren didn't want things to turn out this way." She just what? I interrupted. "She's confused. She didn't mean to hurt you." I let the silence hang for a moment before replying, slow and even. Confused people don't make plans. They don't book trips, smile for pictures, and let their mothers post them online. Confused people don't do that, Sharon. On the other end, there was nothing, just the sound of her breathing, short and uneven, as if she was searching for a defense that didn't exist. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. She's scared to face you. She knows she messed up. I don't need her to face me, I said. I just need her to be honest. But I guess that's the hardest part. We ended the call politely. No yelling, no blame. It felt like two people who had once been on the same side, now standing across from each other, both understanding that the war was over, and neither one needing to win. I set the phone down and looked around the apartment. Nothing had changed, yet everything felt different. The waiting was gone. The heaviness, too. She had already left a long time ago. I just hadn't realized it until now. Later that afternoon, I went for a walk. The air was cool, crisp, sharp enough to keep my thoughts quiet. The street was alive, cars, laughter, the kind of ordinary noise that used to fade into the background but now felt grounding. I walked without direction, realizing with every step that I was slowly detaching from what used to define me. Not because I was strong, but because there was finally nothing left to hold on to. I stopped in front of a flower shop. People were buying bouquets, bright, hopeful, wrapped carefully in paper, promises in color. I used to believe in gestures like that. Now, I just watched. Not bitter, not nostalgic, just light. That evening, I opened our last messages again. I didn't delete them. I didn't reread them either. I just looked at them once. The same words that had cut me days ago now felt hollow, empty, like echoes bouncing around a room long abandoned. I turned off the screen and sat there for a while, and in that stillness, I finally understood something simple. Endings don't always come with arguments, tears, or final words. Sometimes they arrive quietly on a calm afternoon, when you look at everything and realize you no longer need an explanation. 2 days later, just when I had started getting used to the silence, the doorbell rang. A single chime, calm, steady, yet it made the entire apartment pause for a second. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, she was standing there. Lauren, she was wearing the hoodie I bought her last Christmas. Her hair was tied back, her face bare, pale from exhaustion. The dark circles under her eyes said enough, but what struck me most wasn't guilt, it was calculation. She wasn't here to apologize. She was here to negotiate. I didn't mean for things to end up like this, she said quietly. Her tone wasn't emotional, it was measured, like she'd practiced this line in her head all morning. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, silent, waiting. He's nothing, she continued. I felt lost. I let out a quiet laugh, lost, with someone's arm around your waist. She pressed her lips together. No words, none needed. I just wanted to feel something, she said after a pause, her voice low, almost trembling. I felt empty, and then everything just slipped. I nodded once, and the best way to fix that emptiness was to pose for a few photos, smile wide, and let your mum post them online. She dropped her gaze. Silence. Then, softly, I made a mistake. I know that, but I realized what I did. I miss you. I looked at her for a few seconds, calm, detached. No, I said evenly. You don't miss me. You miss being cared about. You miss control. You miss having someone who stays still while you walk away. She shook her head, her voice rising slightly. It's not like that. I don't know how to fix it. You don't need to, I replied, because I don't want you to. She stared at me, eyes wide, stunned by how quiet my voice was, how certain. But I was done. There was nothing left to discuss. In that moment, I realized something. When people hurt you, they often come back not to make things right, but to make themselves feel better. She didn't come to apologize. She came to be forgiven, to ease her conscience, but her peace of mind was no longer my responsibility. She stood there for a few seconds, then turned away. Her footsteps were slow, deliberate, fading down the hallway. The door closed behind her with a soft click, barely audible, but final. I stood there for a moment, hands still on the doorknob, listening to the quiet fill the room again. Not relief, not sadness, just emptiness, clean, quiet, almost peaceful, like clearing out a dusty room that's been shut for too long. I walked back to the table, poured another glass of whiskey, and sat down in the same chair as before. The stillness returned, familiar but lighter. That was when I understood some people don't come back because they want you. They come back because they can't stand the fact that you've learned to live without them, and that's why, this time, I didn't open the door again. That night, the apartment returned to its original state, quiet, clean, orderly. I sat in the chair, the soft yellow light casting across the table, just enough to see the faint ring of water at the bottom of my glass. Outside, the wind brushed against the curtains. Everything seemed still, but in my mind there was a sharp awareness. This wasn't over. I was right. About an hour later, my phone rang. Her number. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Her voice was low, hoarse, like she'd been crying. Are you really going to just let everything end like this? I answered calmly, I'm not letting it end. I'm just choosing not to drag it out. There was a pause on the other end. Then she said, so one mistake is enough for you to throw everything away. I stared into the glass, my tone steady. A mistake? You call betrayal a mistake? Do you even know the difference between an accident and a choice? Mistakes are unintentional. You chose. Silence. I could hear her breathing, heavy, uneven, like she was holding back tears. Then, in a trembling voice, she said, I know I messed up. I just want a chance to make it right. I've learned my lesson. I leaned back in the chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling, my voice detached. A lesson, huh? I don't think people like you learn through regret. You only learn through loss. She went quiet, then whispered, I still love you. I replied instantly, no, you loved the way I loved you. The silence that followed was long, heavy enough to swallow the room. Then she said softly, you've changed. I answered, no, I just woke up. I didn't wait for another word. I ended the call, slow, deliberate, final. The sound of the disconnect tone was short and dry, but it hit with weight. I placed the phone back on the table and looked at it, still, dark, silent. No more vibrations. No more lights. Just me, the room, and the sound of the wind outside. And I realized not every ending needs closure. Some relationships deserve to end in silence, because sometimes silence is the last form of respect you can give to what once mattered. That night, I went to bed early. For the first time in weeks, I slept straight through. No dreams, no thoughts, no sudden wake-ups. When morning came, the light in the room felt different. Not brighter because of the sun, but because her shadow wasn't there anymore. As I poured myself a cup of coffee, a quiet thought crossed my mind. Maybe this is what growing up really is. The moment you realize that peace doesn't come when someone comes back. It comes when you finally stop waiting. A week passed, and life slowly found its rhythm again. Or maybe it was a new version of normal, one I was still learning to live with. Every morning, I brewed my coffee, opened the window, and let the sunlight spill into the room. Went to work, came home, ate dinner, worked out, and let the quiet nights unfold. There were no more texts, no more sudden calls, no one left to wait for. But strangely, that emptiness no longer frightened me. It felt lighter, almost liberating, as if I had finally stepped out of the cramped room of old memories and could finally breathe air that was mine alone. That afternoon, I decided to clean the apartment. On the table were traces of what once was an old picture frame. A few movie tickets, a pair of mugs, a notebook where she had once scribbled down a few lines of poetry. I didn't burn them, didn't throw them away, and I didn't try to forget. I simply placed them neatly into a box and closed the lid. Not because I still cared, but because I wanted to keep proof. Proof that I once loved, deeply and honestly enough to never regret it. That night, when the streetlights spilled faintly through the curtains, I opened the old playlist I'd been avoiding for weeks. The first song started, soft, warm, familiar, but this time it didn't hurt. I just sat there, listening quietly, as if I were hearing a story that had already ended long ago, and in that moment, I understood. Love never truly disappears. It just changes form. From longing, it becomes a lesson. From pain, it becomes awareness. And in the end, it becomes strength, the kind we never ask for, but somehow always need. One evening, as I sat on the balcony watching cars glide by below, I saw her, Lauren, crossing the street on the other side. She was with another man, not the one from the old photo. Someone new. They were walking close, smiling, laughing softly, the kind of laughter that sounded effortless, real and whole. For a brief second, I just watched. She didn't see me, and I didn't want her to. I turned away quietly, feeling nothing, no anger, no ache, no bitterness, just a fleeting moment, passing like wind. I walked back inside, closed the door, and smiled a quiet, peaceful smile. Not because I had forgotten her, but because I no longer needed to remember. That night, I wrote a few simple lines in the new notebook I had bought after she left. Some people come into our lives only to teach us how to stand tall when they walk away. When I finished, I set down the pen, closed the notebook, and blew out the candle on the table. The flame vanished, the room fell into darkness, but for the first time in a long time, there was light inside me, and I finally understood. Peace doesn't make noise. It doesn't come from someone returning or saying sorry. It comes the moment you stop wanting anyone else to be responsible for your happiness. And that was the moment I truly began to live again.